Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen O'Brien. I work at the University of Manchester as the academic lead for sustainability, teaching and learning. I am so sorry to not be there with you in person today. We've just released a big piece of work around green skills, which will be really exciting for the city, and it relates to our sustainable development goals. But it was only released last week, so I've had to go and work on that, which I share not so much in self-indulgence, but in hope that Alison and Helen are still talking to me for not being there in person today. And it's not at all representative of my commitment to the B Cup. I am a massive advocate. I've been privileged to watch Alison's work and indeed to be slightly involved by working with our students in this area. Interestingly, students also independently came to me expressing a concern about the waste created by disposable cups across campus and indeed beyond. So they had already identified the socio-economic and environmental problem across campus and indeed the city. Now, I'm really mindful that I am probably preaching to the choir in terms of sustainability, but I was asked today to talk a little bit about the broader framing of where cups fit into this question of carbon, sustainability, and our changing environment. As I said to you before, I'm a massive advocate of the B Cup, but I was truly flabbergasted when I began to read around statistics of disposable cups. And as everyone knows, often sustainability is a question of balancing people, profit, and planet. We need to consider the socio-economic and environmental factors. It's hugely complex. Equally, I would argue that coffee, and indeed other beverages, is life. So we need to be really realistic about what works, what needs to be adapted, what fits to enable sustainability initiatives that are resilient, that they work for everybody as far as humanly possible, they're accessible and they're inclusive. And this is where I'd like to suggest to you that this is not just a cup, but it is an incredible opportunity for sustainable change. So let's look to why. Now, many of you may have seen an image like this. I've plagiarized this slide from Simon Dew, who is part of Manchester City Council, EEC, work and skills. So many of you will be aware that Manchester has a zero carbon target by 2038 based on a carbon budget actually created by colleagues at the Tyndall Centre. And we also know that despite some successes, particularly within our mission-based approach, we are nowhere near on track at the moment. We need to accelerate our action. It's a bold and brave plan to consider our carbon and indeed our biodiversity emergencies, but we need to work faster and harder to accelerate work towards those targets. This is also where I'd argue with you that our climate is not changing. It has changed. And we have examples of this precisely because we are not within our carbon budget of increased extreme weather events, for example, across Greater Manchester. We know that average temperatures have already increased by 0.75 degrees centigrade. The 2022 summer heat wave saw record temperatures of 40 degrees centigrade for the first time ever. Rainfall is fascinating. So we've had a reduction of annual summer rainfall between 10 to 25%, whilst average annual winter rainfall has increased between 10 and 50% since our records began in 1961. So we know that the climate is changing as a result, a direct result of our carbon, natural cycles as well, but mainly our carbon too. And as many of you will also know, GMCA released their new environment plan at the Green Summit last December, that has clear targets to contribute towards our net zero and enhanced biodiversity approach. So targets for each of the aims for the next 5 years. One of which is around our circular economy, with particular targets around single-use items and consumption of recycled materials. So, where do cups fit in with all of this? I hear you cry. So, the humble cup, and this is what I found truly fascinating when I began to read into cups. And firstly, depending upon the source that you engage with, around 300,000 disposable cups are used every day in Manchester. That contributes to somewhere in the region of the 3.2 billion disposable cups that are used in the UK every year. So, the scale here is massive. But then the individual cup is also really quite fascinating. So many of you will know better than I do. Cups are made out of different materials. They come from different, therefore they have different price points. Equally, some research I was reading talked about how difficult it is to recycle cups. I never know where to put my vegware cup, for example, but some sources were saying that only around 1% of disposable cups are actually recycled. Many of them end up in landfill or they're incinerated. Now, we know in Greater Manchester that we have a problem with our air quality. Around 1,200 deaths every year are attributed to air pollution. Disposable cups then are being incinerated. We have transboundary pollution and they're contributing to this issue. And or they break down in landfill. So again, depending upon how the cup is made, because a disposable coffee cup needs to hold a hot liquid, they need a plastic coating. So the polyethylene then tends to break down. So disposable coffee cups, I was reading, release somewhere in the region of 25,000 microplastic particles in 15 minutes. So there's lots of discussions about oceans at the moment. It's now well recognized that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans than there will fish. But that's not talking about microplastics. Microplastics are these tiny particles of 5 millimeters or smaller, that apparently are released at a scale of 25,000 every 15 minutes that a coffee cup is used. And there's some fascinating research by Patra et al., very recent, looking particularly at coffee cups and microplastics. Again, depending upon which source you look at, cups are believed to have a carbon footprint of anywhere between 10 and 30 grams of carbon, some going as far as 60 or 70, depending upon the complexity of the cup. And each cup requires 0.58 of a litre of water to make. So think back to changing water availability in Manchester as one hyperlocal example. So as cups, as items, they are have massive environmental impact. And of course, this is the question of scale when we are using 300,000 of them every single day in Manchester. But this could also be an opportunity. This suggests that somewhere in the region of 300,000 people could be reducing their carbon footprint, reducing the release of microplastics, reducing demand on water and impact on air quality, whilst holding a statement of sustainability that could then be a catalyst for much greater sustainable change. And let's be realistic, we are always going to need some level of disposable cups. We also need an energy infrastructure that is smart, flexible, and fit for purpose, alongside a reliable, accessible, and affordable sustainable transport system, and so on and so forth. But we absolutely need to bring our citizens along on this journey. I have mixed feelings about the idea that small actions do add up because they suggest a certain level of responsibility, but the small actions that do add up certainly inspire and empower action, particularly when local community wealth is built in the process. And this is also where Greater Manchester has a mobile population. So those 300,000 strong force of behavioural change could be spreading the sustainability word like a Trojan horse by carrying that sustainable, reusable cup. Now, as I said to you earlier, coffee cups and other cups for other beverages are indeed life. I love that for me, the B cup scheme offers me greater flexibility and is actually more accessible than my usual travel cup. But again, sustainability is complex. There are social, environmental, and economic factors to consider. Today, you have the most incredible opportunity to hear from a panel of people who have been involved in this work from the very beginning. I'm sure they're open to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly so that you can think about how you could make the B Cup work for you in your setting. It might need adapting, it might need tweaking to enable this potentially 300,000 strong force for sustainability change. So massive, massive thanks to our panelists today. And I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person, but please do consider how the B Cup might be this incredible sustainable opportunity within your practice. Thank you so much.